something happened in that room that you still haven't fully named, not because you don't remember it. You remember it precisely. The preparation was complete. You had mapped the material. You knew what you were walking into. You walked in. And within 60 seconds, you knew something was already off. Not off in a way you could point to. Off in a way the room would deny it if you name it out loud. The eye contact distribution itself in a way that told you certain arrangements had already been made. A conversation closed a few beats faster than it should have right as you arrived. Someone finished their thoughts in a way that signaled the flow was being managed, not shared. And you, who have delivered at the highest level in every environment you have ever entered, could not locate your footing. Not because you weren't ready, not because you didn't belong there, because the room you had already decided who you are. And that decision was running underneath every word being exchanged. Invisible to anyone who has never been on the receiving end of it. The coaching you received said, own the room. Nobody told you what to do when the room already owns the narrative about you. That is what this episode is about. What's good with you? Welcome back to another episode of the I Don't Subscribe. I'm Ibrahim Dafe. I want to take a moment to say that this episode is empowered by House of Lone Wolf. You heard? For the returning listeners, you might be thinking, didn't we already do this? Reading rooms, trusting your body, detecting what is real underneath the surface. And you were absolutely right. We did. That was a different type of one, though. You see, that episode was about your internal signal, your nervous system reading accurate data, and you calling it a personal flaw instead of what it actually was, a detection. This episode is not about whether your signal is accurate. This is about the room itself as an active system running an algorithm on you before you open your mouth. Pause. Here's the line that separates them. If you have been treating an environmental problem like a confidence problem, that is why the confidence work never fully land. You are medicating the wrong diagnosis. Two different wounds, two completely different prescriptions. Let me describe a room. Not a boardroom, a different kind of room entirely. There's a particular kind of place where the verdict about who you are travels ahead of you. I'm talking about your name, your lineage, the reputation, or the silence of the people you came from, your neighborhood, the side of a conflict you was born on. Man, by the time you arrive, the room has already processed you. The verdict is not announced. It never has to be. But it runs underneath everything in the way the space reorganizes when you enter, in the way certain conversations find a natural stopping point right as you walk in the way certain people look at you a half second too long before deciding how to respond. You learn to read that, not from a book, not from a seminar, from the cost of reading it wrong. Now, when you take that architecture, the pre-verdict, the invisible recalibration, the decision that was made before anyone sat down, and you put it inside a boardroom, the carpet is different. The stakes are measured in different units. The mathematics are identical. The executive who has never been taught to read that mathematics is the most vulnerable person in that room. Not because they aren't capable, because nobody told them the room was already in session before they walked in. Here's what I want to name because I have watched this happen too many times. When an executive doesn't understand what is actually happening in that room, when they feel the prejudgment and interpret it as evidence of their own limitation, they solve the wrong problem. More preparation, more polish, more presence coaching, better delivery. And they spend years, sometimes an entire career, trying to fix a deficit that was never theirs. The tragic part is it never works. Not because they are not growing, because they are growing in the wrong direction. You cannot out prepare a verdict that was not about your preparation. You cannot out present a judgment that was not about your presentation. The room made a category decision. Category decisions do not respond to performance data. So the executive keeps raising their level and the room keeps not moving. And at some point, the executive begins to wonder if the problem is something deeper, something unfixable, something that no amount of work can actually address. That is the most dangerous conclusion an executive can reach. Not because it makes them quit, because it makes them perform from fear. And performing from fear in a room that is already watching you carefully, that is when the room wins. None of that was accurate because the room was not assessing your capability. It was running a filter. And filters, unlike verdicts, are interruptible. But you cannot interrupt what you have not yet learned to read. Let me be specific about the mechanism. The room's algorithm is not personal. I know it feels personal, but it is not. It is a filtering system built on pattern recognition. Those filters were in place before you arrived, before you were hired, before you walked in the door. They were built from who held this role before you, what that person looked like, how they communicated, what the room decided a person in this seat is supposed to sound like. When you show up and the data doesn't match the filter, the room does not update the filter first. It questions the data. That is you. You are the data. The room is questioning. Here's the distinction that changes everything once you see it. The room is not questioning your competence. It is questioning your category. You see, competence is more about what you can do. Category is more about where the room has decided you belong. Those two things can be completely disconnected in high stakes room. And they frequently are. The executive who finally sees that distinction stops trying to outperform the room, because you cannot outperform a verdict that was not about your performance. Now let me give you what I want you to keep in your memory bank or lodge it in your chest after you watch this episode or after you listen to it. The room did not expose your weakness when it prejudged you. It exposed its own assumptions. Let me say that again. The room's prejudgment is not evidence of your deficit. It is intelligent about the room. What filters are running here? Who built them? How old are they? What was threatening them? Who benefits from this current category system? And where's the real decision making happening? Is it even in this room? Or did it happen before you arrive? Those are not defensive questions. Those are competitive intelligence questions. And the executive asking intelligence questions while everyone else is performing for the room is the most powerful person in that space, because they are reading the architecture while everyone else is trying to pass the test. And here's what I need you to understand about that test. The room that prejudged you never intended to grade it fairly. The executive who understands that will stop playing defense and start walking dangerously. You heard? If this is landed, if what I just described is not historical for you, but it's the room you are walking into this week, then the 7-minute executive crisis framework is the first move. It is complimentary at houseoflonewolf.com. It is 7 minutes, a structured diagnostic that tells you exactly what you are holding and what the first move is before you even walk in. Take it, then come back here. You heard? This is not theoretical. This is not seminar version. In the room tomorrow, 3 moves. Move 1. Arrive as the analyst, not the auditioner. The moment you walk in, your job is not to perform. Your job is to observe. Who's aligned before the meeting starts? Who's watching to see which way the room goes before they commit to a position? Who already has the outcome they want and is quietly managing the process toward it? Is the real decision-making authority even in this room? Or did this meeting get decided somewhere else? You are not there to prove yourself. You are there to read the architecture. That shift from auditioner to analyst changes your entire physical presence before you say a single word. Because the auditioner arrives scanning for approval. The analyst arrives scanning for information. The room reads that difference, even if it cannot name it. Move 2 would be to interrupt the pattern, not the process. You cannot flip a prejudgment by out-arguing it. You flip it by doing something the room's filter did not predict. Not louder, not more aggressive, not more polished. Unexpected. Let me give you one specific play real quick. The room expects you to feel the silence, especially uncomfortable silence. The kind that appears right after you speak and nobody responds immediately. You see, most executives, especially executives who are already navigating in a room that prejudged them, feel that silence. They add, they clarify, they soften, they perform into the void because silence in that context feels like rejection. Don't sit in it, not as tension, not as aggression, as someone who does not need the room's response to confirm what they just said was right. That stillness practice, intentional, unhurried, is a pattern the room's filter does not have a category for. And in that gap between what the room expected you to do and what you actually did, that is where the verdict begins to revise. The room cannot process what it did not anticipate. Give it something it did not anticipate. You heard? The third move will be to leave with the data, not the verdict. After the room, do not spend 60 seconds asking yourself what you did wrong. Spend 60 seconds asking what the room told you about itself. What filter ran today? Who built it? What would it take to interrupt it in the next room? And the question almost nobody asks after a hard room, is this an environment worth my sustained investment? Or is this an environment I navigate strategically while I build somewhere that can actually hold what I bring? That is not bitterness. That is intelligence. And not every room deserves your sustained performance. Some rooms deserve your strategic presence while you make your next move. Knowing the difference, that is what separates the executive who escapes the ceiling from the one who keeps renovating. You heard? Now, if what this episode name is a pattern, not one room, but room after room, the Feral Advantage Bundle is the complete system. The 5 frameworks, the environmental audit, a 30-day implementation architecture, the full intelligence system for reading rooms before you walk in, interrupting preset narratives while you are inside them, and navigating environments that have already issued their verdict. It is 86 pages, $497, can be found at houseoflonewolf.com. Remember, when the MBA framework failed, survival intelligence wins. Let me leave you with something you can walk out of here with. Because the room that prejudged you did not see you. It saw its own assumptions wearing your face. That is not a small distinction. Because the executive who finally understands that, who stops trying to correct the room's perceptions and start reading the room's architecture, is no longer playing defense. They are playing a completely different game. You walked in prepared. Now walk in informed. Prepared means you know your material. Informed means you know the room. Yes, both matters. Only one of them changes the outcome. When the verdict was issued before you arrive. And when the verdict was issued before you arrive, you were not behind. You are the only person in that room who knows what game is actually being played. They are performing, you are reading. That executive walks in dangerous. Until next time, I am Ibrahim Dafe, and I don't subscribe because I stopped performing for verdicts I never agreed to accept. You dig?
Wow.